good evening, and welcome. Wherever you are, however your day has unfolded, you are safe now. You're here, in a quiet corner of the past, where the winds of time move gently slowly. Let them carry you far away, across centuries and snow-laced mountains, across dark pine forests and into frozen inlets of an old northern land. Tonight we will visit the world of the Vikings, but not the raging world you may know from stories or screens. No, this is the Viking world as it truly was, for most harsh, ordinary, and full of quiet endurance. We'll explore it through the rhythm of daily life, the struggles of survival, the whispers of myth, and the flickering light of mead halls. Our journey is divided into 4 calm chapters. First, we'll walk barefoot through the dirt floors of a cramped Viking longhouse where lice scuttle, smoke hangs thick, and winters gnaw at the bones. Then we'll follow one of history's most restless souls, Harald Hardrada, a Viking warrior whose life was stitched with exile, ambition, and distant wars. We'll pause in the hush of the burial ground to explore the mysteries the Vikings left behind: shipgraves, runestones, warrior women, and the unanswered questions that still linger in the soil. Finally, we'll enter the feasting hall of a powerful jarl, where laughter, meat, poetry, and quiet rivalry simmer beneath torchlight. So now, let your shoulders relax. Let your breath deepen. Close your eyes if you wish, and imagine yourself on the icy fringe of the northern world, in a village by the fjord. Imagine yourself waking not to an alarm clock, but to the crackling moan of wind through wooden beams, to the slow shifting of sleeping bodies on straw beds, and to the gentle, rhythmic snort of a pig, just inches from your feet. This is not the Viking world of ships and swords. This is home. A long house, perhaps 40 feet long, low-ceilinged, and sealed tight against the bitter cold of a Scandinavian winter. The walls are made of rough timber, the roof thatched thickly with sod. It is warm, but only barely. The fire at the center is never allowed to die, but its smoke lingers in the rafters, slipping through your hair, stinging your eyes. There are no windows, only one small hole near the roof to let the smoke attend the cold in. The floor is packed earth, sometimes scattered with straw, sometimes with animal dung. You share the room not just with your family, but with goats, chickens, and pigs, sometimes even a calf in the worst of winters. Their breath warms the space, and their presence is tolerated. The air is thick with smoke, thick with the scent of unwashed bodies, woolen tunics, dried fish, and damp fur. It's not offensive exactly, simply constant, a smell of living close to close. The longhouse is your world, and it's a small one. You sleep, eat, work, and grow old in the same few steps. There's little privacy. Conversations are hushed, out of habit. Even arguments are muted, because everyone hears everything. And outside, it is colder than you think. Not a brisk kind of cold. The crisp, fresh kind. But a deep, bone-heavy chill that wraps around you, seeps into your fingers, stiffens your joints. In winter, the sun appears low and brief, days vanish quickly, nights stretch long. Hunger is common. Meals are modest and repetitive: barley, porridge, boiled fish, and the occasional bit of dried meat or foraged greens. You might get butter if the cow was well, but that is not always the case. In the lean months, even bark might be ground into flour. Preservation is a skill, but scarcity is a constant. Then there are the lice. You scratch absently at your scalp, your wrists, behind your neck. Everyone does. It's a rhythm of life, barely noticed. Lice and fleas are woven into the seams of daily routine. Clothing is rarely washed. It's made of wool, and washing it in icy water risks ruining it, freezing your hands. Sometimes hair is singed near the scalp, not for style, but to chase out the lice. The rhythm of your day is bound to necessity. You rise when there is light. You tend to the animals, mend tools, patch clothing, chop wood. If you're lucky, you join a fishing boat. If not, you cut peat or gather firewood from the thinning edges of the forest. Each task is survival, repeated without question. Religion is woven through everything quietly. You mutter thanks to the local land spirits, perhaps leave a token in the woods, or whisper a word to Thor when lightning splits the sky. The gods are real, but distant. They do not fix broken tools or fill your belly. Superstition clings like fog. You avoid whistling after dark. You do not speak of trolls near the stones. You carve protective runes into your doorframe, not out of belief, but because your grandmother didn't. She lived to 60. Shame is a powerful force here. To fail in your duties, to show cowardice, to be caught stealing firewood. These are not small matters. You do not want to be spoken of in whispers. Reputation is your only wealth, and yet there are moments of peace. The sound of a spinning wheel, the warmth of animal breath as you curl beside your siblings, the creak of leather and wood, the low chant of a skald reciting a tale while the wind howls beyond the walls, the glow of a single oil lamp flickering on a woven tapestry. This life is not cruel. It is simply what it is. Simple, slow, close to the earth. But make no mistake, you would beg to leave it if offered the chance, and many did. The Forid, not far from your village, cuts like a frozen ribbon through the land. It beckons, mysterious, open, a gateway to something else. Raiding, yes, but also trade, silver, stories. Freedom, men, sometimes women too, leave in spring, young, reckless, or simply tired of lice and porridge. Tired of waiting for barley to grow, they seek something else, far beyond the horizon. And now, let us follow one of them. A man who would cross seas, battle emperors, and return to die beneath a foreign sky. His name was Harold Hardrada. Now let the wind shift, and imagine yourself at the edge of that fjord. The spring ice is breaking. The longboats creak as they bob gently in the meltwater, their prows carved like snarling beasts. Standing there, just 16 years old, is a tall boy with a long nose and fierce blue eyes. His name is Harold Sigurdsson, though in time the world would remember him differently. Harold Hardrada, the Hard Ruler. But on this quiet morning, he is simply a younger half-brother to a king. A boy from the cold north, about to be swept into the great and endless noise of the world. Exile and a boy at war. The year is 1030. Norway is in chaos. His half-brother, King Olaf, once driven out by rivals, returns with an army. Harold, just a teenager, joins him not as a prince, but as a warrior in training. The Battle of Stiklestad is swift, muddy, and brutal. Olaf is killed, and Harold, wounded, flees. Across the mountains he goes, into Sweden, across the Baltic, back to Kiev and Rus. And finally, all the way south, where the air is hot and the sky strange, to Constantinople, the northern giant in Byzantium. In the golden city of the Eastern Roman Empire, Harold enlists in the Varangian Gardan, elite corps of foreign warriors, mostly Norsemen, prized for their loyalty and towering stature. He is only 18. Here the smells are new. Incense, roasted lamb, olive oil, and strange spices. The language is foreign, the customs confusing, the walls impossibly high. But Harold learns. He fights for the emperor across the Mediterranean, serves in Sicily, he battles pirates, he rides into the Holy Land, he survives rebellions, and he rises. Within a few years, he commands troops, not by charm, not by birth, but by sheer will, and by being very, very good at war. And war, in this age, is constant. But even here, Harold cannot forget where he came from. He writes poems in the Old Norse tongue. He sends silver home riches gathered not from raids, but from pay. He earns a fortune, a reputation, and a sense of power that had been denied him back in the cold fjords of youth. Still, he does not belong in Byzantium. He is not Roman. He is not tame. And so, when the time comes, Harold leaves. Not quietly. Some say he escapes imprisonment, fleeing the city with gold hidden in barrels. Some say he leaves in defiance of the Empress herself. Whatever the truth, he returns north. Wealthier, older, harder. The king returns back in Scandinavia. Norway is still splintered. Harold allies with another ruler, and together they seize the kingdom. By 1046, he is king. By 1047, sole king. King of Norway. But peace is not in Harold's nature. He wages war on Denmark again and again, like waves crashing on stone. Year after year, for nearly 2 decades, he launches invasions. Never quite winning, but never quite losing. It becomes a pattern, a habit, and back home, his rule is strict. Hard. He raises taxes, crushes dissent, favors his own. The people begin to whisper. Harold Hardrada. Not unfair. Not cruel exactly, just unrelenting. The English temptation by 1066, Harold is 50 years old. He has ruled for 20 years. He is wealthy, scarred, experienced, and perhaps bored. Then word comes from the west. The King of England has died. A cousin of the old Danish King Harold's old rival wants Harold to press a claim to the throne. Harold hesitates, but not for long. He gathers ships, warriors, old allies, and young men eager for silver. They set sail. Die. And this is where the saga ends. Stamford Bridge and the end of the saga in September. The Norwegians land in northern England. They fight, they win, and then, at a place called Stamford Bridge, they are caught by surprise. The English king, Harold Godwinson, marches his army north in record time. The two heralds meet, one in chainmail, we're told, without even time to don armor. The battle is fierce, too fierce. Harold fights as he always has. He wades deep into the fray, tall, visible, tireless, until at last he is struck. An arrow, perhaps, or a sword. The sources do not agree. But he falls. And with him, the last great Viking invasion ends. He is 51 and far from home. The afterlife of a hard ruler, Harold's body is returned to Norway. Eventually, it is buried in a monastery. His sons rule after him. His name is remembered in sagas, poems, and stone. To some, he is the final Viking. The end of an era when Norsemen sailed with axes and dreams. To others, he is just another warlord, ambitious, restless, and ultimately, mortal. But perhaps Harold Hardrada was something more. A bridge between worlds. Between the cold hearths of the north and the golden domes of Byzantium. Between the wild freedom of the Viking Age and the orderly march of medieval kingdoms. And even now, in the rustling of fjord winds, you can almost hear his footsteps. Let the cold winds soften now. Let the clang of swords fade. And come with me to a quieter place. A place of still earth and stone. A burial mound on a misty hill, where the past whispers. The Vikings are often remembered for how they live, trading, feasting, exploring. But they were just as concerned, perhaps more so, with what came after. After life. After the final breath. What then? In this segment, we slow down and drift gently through the world of Viking burials. Their customs, their questions, their mysteries, still not fully understood, because what a people believe about death tells us just as much as how they lived. A grave by the sea. Imagine yourself walking across a grassy knoll in coastal Norway. Below your feet, the earth gently rises into a low, rounded hill. It looks natural. Perhaps just a hump of earth, left by time. But this is no accident. It's a burial mound carefully raised over centuries past. Inside, beneath layers of sod and soil, lies a ship, a real, sea-going vessel. Pulled from the water, dragged ashore, and buried with a body. Or sometimes several. Ship burials are one of the most striking and still mysterious practices of the Viking world. They suggest belief in a journey, a voyage into the next life. The ship is both coffin and carriage, and the bodies within, often high status, a chieftain, a noblewoman. They lie surrounded by weapons, tools, jewelry, sometimes animals, sometimes a sacrifice companion. It is unsettling, but not grotesque. A grave prepared with solemnity, with symbolism. The rhythm of their lives echoed in their deaths. The Oseberg Enigma lets pause at one of the most famous burials ever found, the Oseberg ship, unearthed in 1904 in Norway. It was buried around the year 834. Inside it, the remains of two women, one elderly, possibly of noble birth, the other younger. Her identity uncertain. Were they mother and daughter, priestess and servant, friends, something more? Archaeologists still debate, but what is not in doubt is the richness of the grave. The ship itself is beautifully carved with sinuous dragons and curling vines. Inside were sledges, beds, textiles, animal remains, carved wooden buckets, and richly decorated carts. It was not simply burial, it was a statement, a message to gods and men alike. And yet, the mystery lingers. The women were buried with reverence, but the grave had been looted, perhaps centuries ago. Many questions remain. Who were they? Why such grandeur? What did it mean? Warrior women and weapon graves now picture a smaller grave, simpler, found in Sweden. In the town of Birka, for decades it was assumed to be the grave of a male warrior. Sword, axe, 2 shields, a spear, and a full set of gaming pieces for strategy and war planning. A respected warrior's resting place. But in recent years, DNA analysis revealed something surprising. The warrior is a woman. This sparked debates across academic and cultural circles. Had we misunderstood Viking gender roles? Were women more involved in warfare than once believed? Perhaps, or perhaps this woman was rare, unusual. The exception that proves the rule? We may never fully know. But the grave remains quiet and solid in the earth, whispering its own truths. Runestones and silent testimonies. Not all Viking graves were so grand. Most people were buried more modestly, shrouded in cloth, laid in shallow earth, perhaps with a few tools or a brooch. But sometimes they were honored with runestones. Tall, flat slabs of stone, etched with symbols and short inscriptions. They were not tombstones in the modern sense, but monuments. They often stood along roads or in gathering places meant to be seen. Some praised the dead. He raised this stone in memory of his brother, a brave man. Others warned enemies, do not break this stone, may Thor strike you. The language is terse, the letters straight and sharp. But even in their brevity, there is feeling, longing, respect, pride. These stones still stand today, silent but not forgotten. Worn smooth by rain, yet legible, timeless. Fire and water, cremation and ritual. Before the widespread adoption of Christianity, Viking burial practices were not uniform. Some buried their dead, others burned them. Cremation was common: ashes placed in an urn, sometimes with grave goods, and buried in a low mound or cairn. The fire was not seen as destruction, but as transformation. Flames purified, released the spirit. The famous image of a Viking funeral ship set ablaze and pushed to sea. That is rooted in myth more than common practice. But it did happen, occasionally. And more importantly, it lived on in story. Because in the Viking mind, death was not an end. It was a continuation, to Valhalla perhaps, for the warriors. To the field of the goddess Freya. To the deep and shadowy halls of hell, for those who died of sickness or old age. Wherever the soul went, it traveled on, and the living helped it along. The Christian shift by the late 900s and early 1000s, Christianity began to change Viking death. Graves grew simpler, burials aligned to face east, toward Jerusalem. Churchyards replaced barrow fields, but many still clung to the old ways. Crosses and Thor's hammers were worn side by side. Rites were mixed, layered. A Christian prayer whispered. As an old rune was carved into the grave, the transformation was slow, incomplete. Even now, archaeologists find hybrid graves, half Christian, neither one nor the other. Just transitional, much like the people themselves. The questions left behind, and so, as you lie still and listen, know this. Much of what we know about Viking burials, we do not truly know. Only guess. Graves give us hints. Artifacts give us suggestions. But the full meaning, the emotions, the beliefs, the rituals whispered in smoke and shadow are largely lost. All we can do is read the bones, trace the runes, and listen. Listen to the quiet, to the hush of a burial mound under snow, to the soft rattle of earth over wood, to the silence of a stone that once marked a life. Now, gently, we rise from the grave fields, brush the earth from our hands, and we walk back toward light. Not just any light, but the glow of fire through thick wooden doors. Laughter, music, and warm meat carried on the wind. Let us now step into the heart of power, into the hall of a jarl. Let the wind settle. Let the snow drift quietly outside. Step now carefully, slowly through a high wooden doorway. The scent of pine smoke and roasting meat meets you. The hum of voices, low and rhythmic. The flicker of flame on polished wood. You are inside a Viking hall, not just any hall. at the seat of a Jarl noble, a war leader, a man of influence. Tonight there is a feast. And for a few quiet moments, we leave behind the bone-chilling longhouse, the frostbitten field, the mound of earth, and enter warmth, power, and spectacle. The architecture of power of the Jarl's Hall is larger than the longhouse you remember from Segment.
One.
Its roof rises higher-arched beams like the ribs of a great whale. Torches flicker in iron brackets along the walls. The smoke, thick and fragrant, curls upward through a hole in the roof where the night sky barely peeks in. Along the length of the hall are long wooden benches draped in fur. At the center, a stone hearth burns bright, casting amber light over smiling faces and gleaming goblets. The walls are not bare. No, here, the walls tell stories. Tapestries hang, dyed in rich but muted hues ochre. Deep red, forest green. Scenes of battle, of gods, of ships on wild seas. And near the high seat, a carved wooden post, perhaps etched with runes or the twisting shapes of beasts. This is not just furniture, it is status, carved into wood and hung from rafters. This is a space not only to eat, but to impress. The ritual of the feast. The feast is not an everyday meal. It is a social ceremony, a performance of wealth and generosity. It might mark the return of a successful raid, the marriage of noble kin, the festival of Yule, or simply the Jarl's desire to remind others of his place. You sit if you are lucky near the center. Closer to the hearth, the food is better. The mead flows more freely. At the far ends of the hall sit the lesser folk. Farmers, craftsmen, old warriors. They watch, they listen. They drink in silence. But here, near the high seat, the Jarl raises a drinking horn, its rim edged in silver, and begins the first toast. It is not simply scowl. It is to Odin, or Thor, or Freya. It is to ancestors, to honor, to luck. Each guest in turn must drink. To refuse would be unthinkable, and so the mead moves, sweet, sticky, potent. The warmth spreads, the voices rise, but only slightly. Even here in revelry, there is restraint. You are being watched, judged. Not everyone at the table is friend. Meat, fish, and fire. The food is plentiful, but not exotic. Roast lamb, if the herds were healthy, boiled cod, salted and dried from the summer's catch, flatbread, torn by hand, butter yellow and thick, turnips, beans, and barley cakes. From time to time, a delicacy. Seal, swan, or even horse meat. If it is a pagan celebration, such things are rare, often symbolic. The cooking is done over the central hearth, or in smaller fires outside. The meat is spitted and turned, the aroma, rich, fatty, comforting. It fills the space, clinging to your cloak and your beard. Plates are wooden, sometimes horn. Knives are personal. You bring your own always. Forks not yet. What? You eat with fingers and blade, the chewing is quiet, not out of politeness but caution. The wrong word at the wrong time can cost you. The skald stands as the meal winds down. The skald rises. He is the poet, the memory keeper. Dressed in a dark cloak, perhaps holding a small harp, or simply his voice. He recites not from paper, but from memory. The old tales, the sagas, the lineage of the Jarl. His voice is measured, rich, and slow. Like ours, he speaks of Sigurd, the dragon slayer, of Odin's sacrifice on the tree, of a storm-tossed voyage to distant shores. The hall quiets. Even the dogs fall still. For this is not entertainment, it is identity. To know your ancestors, to know your gods, is to know your place. When the tale ends, the Jarl might nod, or offer a silver coin. A good skald is valuable, a poor one, quickly forgotten. Politics by firelight. And even now, while the skald recites and the mead flows, something else is happening. Quiet conversations, meaningful glances, a short nod, a furrowed brow. The hall is not just for eating and song. It is a political theater. Alliances are forged here in the space between toasts. Rivalries sharpen. Marriages are suggested. Loyalties tested. Always even in laughter. He calculates. For tomorrow, he may need men for a raid. or to settle a land dispute, or to collect taxes. Tonight, he gives. Tomorrow he will ask. The night grows deep, the fire burns lower, the meat is gone, the laughter thinner. One by one guests rise and drift into sleep on benches near the fire, beneath cloaks of wool and fur. The Jarl retires last. His mind is full, his hall warm. Outside, the snow falls gently. The fjord lies still. And inside, the stories have been told. The bonds tightened. The power reaffirmed. This is a Viking feast, not wild, not reckless, but structured. A ritual of survival and status and memory. And now, as the flames fade to embers, you close your eyes too, not in the hall of the Jarl, but in the quiet of your own space. Far from frost and fire, and now the feast has ended, the longhouse sleeps. The fjords lie silent beneath a pale northern moon, and we drift gently back. You've walked the frozen fields of a Viking village, sat in the smoke and closeness of everyday survival. You've followed the long, winding saga of a restless King Harald Hardradoth through exile, glory, and death. You've wandered among burial mounds and ancient stones, listening to what the dead have left behind. And you've warmed yourself by the hearth of a powerful Jarl, where politics, poetry, and roasted lamb mingled under torchlight. But now, our journey through the Viking world has come to an end. Not with a battle, not with a raid, but with stillness. Because for all the images of fire and steel we attach to the Vikings, their world was more often quiet than it was loud. It was wind and wool, fish and frost, hard beds and soft songs. It was rhythm, the unhurried beat of seasons and stars, of work, of waiting, of watching the skies for omens. It was superstition and tradition, blended so deeply into life that neither needed explanation. It was suffering, yes. Lice, hunger, isolation, but also resilience in rituals that gave meaning to the cold. And perhaps that is why this history, though distant and dark, feels close to us. Because under the rough cloaks and carved runes, they too searched for warmth, for dignity, for story. Let you return to your own time. Let the distant chill fade, let the old smoke dissolve, and let your breath grow slower, your thoughts lighter, your body still. You are not on a wooden bench by the fire. You are here, safe, warm, and far from frost. Close your eyes. Listen to the quiet. Let history keep watch now. Sleep, if you haven't already, and dream, perhaps, of fjords,